that is the issue, because when we get feedback, we take it personally, whether it's good or bad. And that comes from when we were a little baby, when we were conditioned that, okay, if we please the big people, we get rewards. And if we don't, then it's bad. But that's great when you're growing up because you're learning. When you get to a certain age, you can't distinguish I can't distinguish necessarily between the good and the bad. I can't. I get a kick out of when I find myself saying this or somebody else saying this. Well, I'm going to take the good and I'm not going to take the bad. I can't do that, because if you go by me every day and you say great work, great work, great work, great work, great work, 7 days in a row, the 8th day you go by me and you even say nothing. You don't even say something bad. You say nothing. I'm going to say, what did I do? I didn't get good work today. So that's in itself feedback, but I take it personally.
We already did a short one.
Oh,
Karen, we redid the feedback model with the glasses so people could see it virtually and stuff like that, right? So that's what we're hopping off of now.
I still have to find a francophone willing to do it.
You did it with Jason.
Did we?
Oh my goodness.
You did a very good job, by the way.
We did the whole thing with water, and then you basically did your amazing.
Okay, that was probably felt like elections, Christmas, job change. I don't know what else you were
November,
doing.
beginning of December, something like that.
You're gonna laugh at me, but I through the Christmas holidays, I only took 3 days. I only took that days I was working, and during that time, I was thinking, geez, you know what? I wish I could find a francophone so I could record that video.
Wow. Would you like me to send it to you? You did a great job.
Oh, chunk of my life was missing. No, I remember it now. Yeah, I was doing a election campaign.
You managed to fit it in the craziest time.
I was doing an election campaign, a new job, and the toughest course of my master's degree. So
right, I forgot about that part.
I actually think this is a good jumping off point, because oftentimes we're so hard on ourselves in life, and I am no stranger to putting pressure on myself that is unkind to me. It's because we don't focus a lot on the what went well, and what the feedback model helps provide space for is a specific front-loaded, let's focus on what went well, so that we're not just focused on what we knew we already screwed up on or struggled with.
Well, you're right, Ian, because when I think about that period in time that we were just talking about, let me talk about me for a sec. I'll talk about me for a sec. So if I look at that, every time I'm referred to the period between October 31st and the Christmas break, I refer to that as the holy crap period, because I was doing toughest course in my master's course, the election campaign, and starting a new job, and also transitioning from the old, so still carrying that weight and being brutally hard on myself. Okay, that's not finished. This is not going well. How am I going to do this? Up at 5, to bed late, and feeling that I wasn't fulfilling any of these. I was a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I was just going full speed ahead, but still in my mind, I was very, very critical about what I was doing. And it was taking me out of the game, because then I was saying, well, what if I don't win the election? What are people going to say? What if I don't get another A in this? It's going to ruin my streak. And, and I kept thinking, my daughter who said, C's, get degrees. So it's all of these were absolutely there, Ian, you're right. But what went well, transitioned successfully, won the election, and got an A. So, but I still, even though I got those successes, I'm still harping on the challenges of that time. Mm-hmm. And that's probably what I'm going to remember. But there was no debrief. I haven't debriefed until now. Until now, this very minute. There was no debrief. No contextual discussion to bring it all in and say this wasn't all that. That had not occurred until Ian spoke. That's the power of the feedback.
And pause.
And
Yeah, we have a lot of history with feedback. We've been dealt, a half deck of feedback. We've been trained to get feedback when things aren't going well, when so that gets into our brain and how we look at the world. You just described it perfectly, Mark, that time in your life. We can be our own worst critic. So that is already inside of us. So as soon as we hear an inkling of maybe what we would see as critical feedback, that's triggering all of that. So the development and the rigor of giving and receiving feedback, the practice, I would say, of just learning how to do that and regularizing that in a way that's more fulsome, and that's what we talked about in the feedback model, is been for me personally. I've now had that model of what went well, tricky, and do differently. Doesn't matter what the words are, but I am very now aware of bringing that into any kind of feedback I'm giving myself or I'm giving others, because it's super important to start to train our bodies that this is, and giving it rigor of examples and catching it. I always believe in the just in time. What it taught me as a manager was to notice good. Isn't that interesting? To notice the good and really make a point of letting people know when I saw it. That was a huge appreciation moment. Not waiting till like March 31st when we did our yearly annual appraisals, to notice it in a meeting and walk over that person's desk, so I think it starts with being a good observer of self, observer of others, and to be able to share that with them. So you're building some capacity. And I don't know if this has been something, I know I wasn't taught or self-taught or observed for myself inside my kind of spheres of influence at home and work till I got introduced to the coaching world in my 40s. I don't know about you two.
Until I learned this from you and Bob, I don't know if I had experienced true caring version of giving feedback. Oftentimes it was the shit sandwich. Something good, something bad, and then something good to whatever, try to make you feel better. Or it was a laundry list of the things that didn't go so well. Or that's maybe all I even was capable of absorbing, because there's not a focus on what went well. So the piece I would add to this is maybe not offloading everything that you would give in feedback. Pick the one or two things that are the most they would serve this person the most in their learning, growth, development, production, whatever it is that they're doing, so that they have something that they can work with. A laundry list is too many things and too overwhelming in order to be able to process and to make adjustments on.
I think the feedback model finds its strength not only in the three elements that we've gone through. What was tricky, what was do differently, but the exchange. Because, I'll refer again to my experience. And I'm thinking about it now without realizing it, knowing the feedback model. When I was concerned about my grade in my course, the teacher gave us a first crack at the final exam. And then in the feedback he gave us, because we had a chance to redo before the final, so it was like, give it a whirl, and if you don't get it, then you can do it again. And I got 78. I wasn't happy with my 78. My first instinctive reaction was to be, I tensed up and I was not a happy camper. How dare he give me a 78? But here's the deal. In his comments, he said, you really go, and he was really going through what went well. You really highlighted this. You did good citations here. So, and then he said this. He said, the question said, according to chapter 5, and you didn't quite capture chapter 5 as much as you could have. I suggest you go back, use examples from your life and chapter 5, fill that in. It's exactly what I did, and I finished with an A. So the lesson here, but I had to also say, okay, did I really do? Because my first reaction was, I did the best work I could do, and how dare he? But when I looked at it and I said, well, maybe I did, maybe I could. Yeah, that's really good. That's cool. I'm not changing that. Tricky. Yeah, okay, I could do that. I could cite a bit more. So then it fueled my actions and then increased my performance, but it also increased my way, improved my way of being, because now I had a plan. Now I had perspective. Now I had a bit more clarity. And I had that exchange, even though if it wasn't even an in-person exchange, it was on paper, but I could hash it out. And it was in there. I don't know if he did it purposely through his academic wisdom, his pedagogy, methodology, but it worked, and I recognize it now.
I think that's the value of grounding. He gave you a specific example and potentially do differently so that you could tack on to that would improve your score. So if you're really going to give your feedback with care, ground them in specific realities that can be tangibly moved towards. And without that, it's just an assessment. It's just an opinion.
Or a critic. I can relate this. I can easily see conversations between parents and children. I mean, we're so used as parents to correcting and, I'm going to use this big word, criticizing. And what if we did it differently? What if we use the feedback model in situations, as meaningless as situations that they could be, or the big ones or the small ones? What would we be teaching our children as far as their self-evaluation and a dialogue and clarity and relationship?
Just the practice of getting them to go first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and say, no, you can't talk about what you didn't do well yet. I want you to take a minute and capture what you feel you did do well. And then and allowing them permission, because we've been taught, some of us, to not talk nicely about ourselves. Mm-hmm. Don't you brag, you're bragging. Mm-hmm. So there is so much around the what went well. You said something really, I picked up on, Mark. What I talked about is the capacity building to be aware and to observe. Like there's muscle building under giving and receiving feedback and giving examples. And so here we go. We got the self-awareness, being a good observer. So I pick up way more than I did before this, like when people are frowning at me when I'm talking. Like I'm more observant. Or if I said something and they I'm watching body language. So I'm more proactive now because I recognize that there's intel. Feedback I've built a muscle to receive feedback. I'm not saying there isn't times where I go right down to the ground again going, oh man, I suck. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Or that I feel super, super bad about, the feedback I get sometimes when it's the tricky stuff. But I'm more capable of holding that and saying, okay, this is good intel. They can't, because I talk about what can't you see when you're in action? When you're moving around, doing stuff, you can't see yourself. So they have a view of what it looks like from their world. It's always through the lens of their perceptions. However, they have a view I can't see. So am I open? And this is where relationship building, and there's not everybody. Brene Brown talks about the arena and always leaving a room for the critic, but inviting other people, like your people that cheer you on, your family, like don't leave feedback to the critic. there's a seat for the critic, but there's people out there that you need to say, I have so much trust in you, like you two, giving me feedback. I know it's for my well-being, it's for my growth, it's in deep, deep care. So if you build this pattern with each other, it just takes your life, like you said about your beingness, it grows that capacity at a faster level. So the invitation to build this capacity is, it really will help elevate you and accelerate your growth. Having people, including the critic, being able to receive feedback and hold it and say that, how is this serving me? What makes sense to me? What am I not going to take? You can make a choice to say, that's not valuable for me. I'm letting that one go. So it is a real muscle development. And so learning to do that, I have written down on my sheet, it starts with you. If when I started learning this feedback model, I asked my staff, I had just gotten 360 feedback. It was really weird. So I had this whole summary page of all my things that I was really good at and some areas that I needed to do some growth around. So it was a perfect place for me to use the feedback model. So I picked a couple of employees. I said, look, I've been given some feedback that my meetings aren't very organized. So I'm doing some work around that. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing today. Would you mind staying afterwards and giving me some feedback on these 3 things that I've tried to change? And I taught them the feedback model. I went first, then they gave me feedback. So I started to receive the feedback first so that they could see, wow, this model really works. And I was, of course, when you're receiving that feedback, you're often the most vulnerable, not that the person giving doesn't feel uncomfortable as well, but it created a habitual way and some confidence, we use those words a lot, and some competence around giving and receiving feedback. So back to, I love the structure, the flow, because it keeps us in a rhythm. Back to that rhythm word again today. What about you guys? What's your thoughts?
I just wanted to I just wanted to kind of highlight one of the things that you said about you have a choice, because not everybody's going to be tactful on how they give you feedback, right? All feedback is a gift, whether you can recognize it in the moment or not. However, if you're able to maybe take some pause and reflect, and then see from their perspective maybe what that thing is that they thought you should do better or not do, or whatever they said, you can decide whether or not that piece is valuable enough for you that you want to make a change, or you want to implement some sort of change for yourself because you want to take some ownership of that. But sometimes it's not yours to own. It's their perception of you, their assessments, whatever's going on for them. So you have the autonomy to decide what I'm going to take from this feedback and what I want to do with that feedback. I had an example from my past where I got a lot of feedback, and I was able to kind of separate what is the wheat from the chaff. Is that how that works? The wheat from the chaff. And I was able to take the nugget that was good for me that I could apply for my learning and growth moving forward.
I hear you both repeatedly mention perception and awareness. And it reminds me of that, one of my favorite calming, clarifying sayings. What if we could achieve awareness without judgment and perception without opinion? What I'm describing there is feedback without the threat. And I think the feedback model we talk about removes that threat, removes that. And I think it's one way to get that awareness that we need without that judgment and that perception, removing opinion. And I think it's really powerful, combined with the pause to reflect, to clarify. It's a very powerful tool.
And to be able to deeply receive what went well, to receive what people really appreciate about you. Glenn was telling me some very wonderful things we've been together a long time. And I remember like going, I was really uncomfortable with him saying so many nice things that he wanted to say to me. And then I had to stop myself from stopping him. It was really, he wants to tell me, he goes, no, I want you to know this. And so I was able to relax into just receiving the gift of appreciation of what he saw about me and what really, really he valued. So it can be the other way. I've seen people, oh no, don't know, like they don't want, they push even on the good, like the gift there, something that people really say they appreciate about you. So the last thing about the feedback model that I think is powerful is those two words that you can only say when you're receiving the feedback. Thank you. Whether it's what went well, and in the tricky, and in the do differently. So you're not stopping it, even let it come, hold it. And you decide, you said something late about reflection, what you're going to absorb and take with you. But if you stop the what went wells, because we're so used to hearing the criticism, it's another development. So I could feel it, like I was literally, I had my hands up, no, no. And then I realized, so here I go, I'm in the same place. I'm pushing away good. I'm pushing away something that someone wants to say they appreciate about me. Put those hands down.
Sorry, I'm just connecting a dot, but the inverse way so Mark, what you said a few minutes ago was really powerful about and I can't repeat it because I have to really sit with it, the perception, with the judgments or whatever that was. I felt like I got it, but I still I couldn't repeat it and understand it to share it with anybody else. But the whole idea of not judging what comes at you, I was even having a gut reaction like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm used to this old way of, feeling like I've done something wrong first. But Karen, even receiving the good, there's almost like a judgmental lens that she doesn't want to take that in right now. So it's even happening on the receiving of the good. There's a judgmental lens that gets in the way of us receiving the good feedback, the what went wells, when it's all helping us in whatever capacity, whether it's we struggle to receive the good as well as what's not so good. It's all learning how to give and receive, how to open yourself up in one area and grow in different areas of the feedback model itself.
But yes, and it's awareness without judgment, perception without opinion. And here's why it stuck with me. And you're right, I had to sit with it for a while as well, because when I first heard it, it was a slap in my face, because I was at a point in my life where I was taking everything personally, and we do take things personally. That is the issue, because when we get feedback, we take it personally, whether it's good or bad, and that comes from when we were a little baby, when we were conditioned that, okay, if we please the big people, we get rewards. And if we don't, then it's bad. But that's great when you're growing up because you're learning. When you get a certain age, you can't distinguish I can't distinguish necessarily between the good and the bad. I can't. I get a kick out of when I find myself saying this or somebody else saying this. Well, I'm going to take the good and I'm not going to take the bad. I can't do that, because if you go by me every day and you say great work, great work, great work, great work, great work, 7 days in a row, the 8th day you go by me and you even say nothing. You don't even say something bad. You say nothing. I'm going to say, what did I do? I didn't get good work today. So that is in itself feedback, but I take it personally. So in order to be able to get awareness without judgment, perception without opinion, I need to be able to not take the good or the bad personally. So not take anything personally, because I take the bad, then my mind goes into a spiral of, oh no, and everything comes out. If I take the good, then I get inflated. I'm good, everything's fine. The issue with that is it doesn't help me grow. Whereas when we have the feedback model, it allows us that perspective. Well, tricky, do differently. So there's good, bad, and let's think about the future. Let's think about next time. Let's grow. That's why I like it so much.
And with consistent application, replication, it can serve. Done once a year, not going to cut it. It has to be, I can't remember the word you used, Karen, but it's the continual usage of it. The rigor of having it just in time feedback
Mhm.
allows for it not to be a scary endeavor when, can we have a quick meeting?
No,
In your office?
No, I'm being
Or
called to the
at-
principal's office. It's a horrible walk of shame to that place, even if
And the
it's
door,
online.
and the door's closing.
Oh, the
You
blinds.
know, what we have learned, because we practice this every time we work together, we do, well, afterwards we reflect, we share, the front end loading of this, what are we gonna give feedback? It's not a big bowl of soup that we're, in the kitchen. So if you can put some, like, what do I want feedback? Like, so if you can pre-do that, like, where do we want to focus our feedback? That's again helpful, because then in reflection, in observation, and in examples, and then we're coming in with a little bit more of, okay, what's in the soup bowl right now of feedback, and what are we going to focus on for our growth and development, or to capture what we did this year at work. So setting those things up ahead of time I think, also helps with, just building a bit of a stable ground to do the work. And then add in the feedback model where that person has the same job to go back and reflect, write what went well, tricky, do differently, come in prepared. And then as the manager, if you're giving feedback, now you just fill in the cup, you add in. Like, it's just really, it's wonderful. And it's got a whole bunch of rigor around it. So I like the idea of that kind of building, giving and receiving feedback in a workplace, on a curling team. When I was coaching a curling team, they set, what are the areas of focus, and what are we going to, this game, what are we focusing on that we're going to give each other food? So they had so much rigor, because you said something really important, Ian. A shopping list of feedback is overwhelming. But boy, if you target a specific area, that can be super powerful. And then you keep working that area and that feedback model, and then you get to a level of excellence, and then you can move to the next one. Sometimes that's a really nice progressive way, and digestible is the word I'm going to use, way to give and receive feedback. I have a dream that feedback is more, that we look, like you said in the feedback model, that you look forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
That it's that kind of feedback, that it is so linked to making us better, like growing ourselves and growing your family, growing your team, growing your relationship. I just think it would be so cool. And I have used it in my own space, and it's really paid off. It's settled some unsettled business in a 40-year relationship, because we now have a place where we can do that in a way that we do that. And we've made some decisions on the areas we want to do that.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
Wrap up?
Final thoughts? Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Practice it. Practice it. I think I think practicing it makes it, I guess, intuitive after a while, where it doesn't make it as difficult. Like, now if somebody says I want feedback, I'm automatically going to the feedback model. There's no other option for me, because that's a wholesome, it's a comprehensive, it's a supporting tool. And I don't want to give just negative feedback. Or even positive, or even just positive feedback.
The thing I'll always go back to is that all feedback is a gift, no matter how it's delivered, but it can be delivered in a way that is more supportive. And that you have the option to select the piece or the pieces that you want to work towards. You have a choice.
I just, the words I'll leave is start small. Start small. There's a lot of hurt in here from feedback that did not go so well. So yeah, practice and start small. Pick people you trust and love and start there.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.